purpose and functions of a suspension system. Cushions road shocks due to bump and potholes in the road, ensuring that the wheels follow the road profile. Very little tire load fluctuation. Support the weight of the vehicle body. Hold wheels in alignment. Transfer longitudinal acceleration and deceleration forces between axles and frame. Provide stability or rollover resistance. Click on picture to know more.
The front springs should have only one job. They should not have to help in steering nor in supporting the axle as the old leaf springs did. So the axle has been put over instead of under the springs and made stronger than ever. Coil springs are used in place of the leaf springs. They are fully enclosed. And now both front springs work independently. Now that the front springs are made just as soft as those of the rear, they don't have anything to do except make the road smooth and the passenger.
Introduction to driveline and axle system. Click on each tab to know more, and then click Next to continue. Non-independent or dependent suspension. Non-independent suspension has both right and left wheel attached to the same solid axle. When one wheel hits a bump in the road, its upward movement causes a slight tilt of the other wheel. Rigid suspension. In a rigid suspension, the axle is mounted on longitudinal leaf springs, which are compliant vertically, can move up and down, and stiff horizontally, cannot move laterally, left and right. The springs are pin connected to the chassis at one end, and to a pivoted link at the other. This enables the change of length of the spring to be accommodated due to loading. Leaf spring suspension. Leaf springs are steel strips laid one over the other and clamped together. Widely used as rear suspension in situations where heavy load carrying is needed and costs are to be low. Elliptical. Leaf springs are commonly called elliptical or semi-elliptical, as they are shaped like a section from an ellipse, held at both ends. Semi-elliptical. In semi-elliptical leaf spring, flat plates of spring steel are bolted together. The front end of the spring is bolted directly to the frame. A swinging shackle at the rear permits the length of the spring to change when it is flexed. U-bolts and plates clamp spring to axle housing. Parabolic. Parabolic spring contains 3 leaves, and multi-leaf spring contains 8 leaves. In parabolic, each leaf acts as a separate spring. In parabolic spring, all 3 leaves are full-length leaves, so that it carries the same load as multi-leaf spring. There is gap between leaves, which in turn reduce the friction between the leaves, and provides better ride comfort. Bogie. Bogie is a wheeled wagon, or trolley. In mechanical term, a bogie is a chassis, or framework carrying wheels. Weveler. Weveler leaf spring is a semi-elliptical leaf spring without shackle. The bush and pin type mounting is replaced with rubber blocks, which insulate the shocks. This design permits limited longitudinal motion of the spring ends due to the rubber blocks at the end. The springs are suited for rated loads, without overload, for passenger application on good roads.
কমপ্লিট হয়েছে তো ঘটে
ঘটে নয় বাবা দুইটা আছে কত জলদি শেষ হলো
Tandem bogie suspension is low ride frequency in laden condition, reduces tire wear and overall suspension, and also reduced pinion, caster, angle variation with 6-rod suspension increases driveline life. Bell crank. Bell crank is a self-compensating under all conditions, resulting in minimal vertical movement of the frame. It also assists in maintaining good road wheel adhesion and unking. The general arrangement of the suspension gives trailing springs, anchored at the front end with load equalized independent suspension. In a semi-independent suspension, the rigid connection between pairs of wheels is replaced by a compliant link, a beam which can bend and flex, providing both positional controls of the wheels as well as compliance. This construction is a lot more simple in construction compared to rigid and independent suspension, but lacks scope for design flexibility. Torsion beam bar. Torsion bars are used to offer easy adjustment on ride height depending on the weight of the car's engine package. Torsion bar is a rod acting in torsion and taking twisting force. This is often used with the independent suspension. Anti-roll bar. An anti-sway or anti-roll bar is intended to force each side of the vehicle to lower or rise to similar heights to reduce the sideways tilting roll of the vehicle on curves, sharp corners, or large bumps. Panhard rod. Panhard rod is an arm linking the rear axle to the body. The rod has pivot joints at each end to allow the movement of the chassis and axle. Independent suspension. In this setup, the left and right wheels are not connected to each other by a solid link and can move independently of each other. As the wheels are independent of the other, they offer a better ride quality and precise handling. McPherson strut. It consists of a steel wire rolled in a form of a spring around a strut. The upper end is connected to a fixed mounting on the vehicle body and the lower to the wheel hub. The strut acts as a damper to minimize the springing action. It is widely used in the front suspension of modern vehicles. Double wishbones. Double wishbone suspension is an independent suspension design using two, occasionally parallel, wishbone-shaped arms to locate the wheel. Each wishbone or arm has two mounting points to the chassis and one joint at the knuckle. Coil spring. This consists of a spring steel rod wound into a coil. It is ideally suited to independent suspension. This is the most common type of spring used by modern vehicles. Multi-link. Multi-link suspension is a type of vehicle suspension design typically used in independent suspensions using 3 or more lateral arms and 1 or more longitudinal arms. Trailing and semi-trailing arm. The trailing arm axle is relatively simple and is popular on front-wheel drive vehicles. It offers the advantage that the car body floor pan can be flat and the fuel tank and or spare wheel can be positioned between the suspension control arms. Semi-trailing arm suspension is a compromise between the swing arm and trailing arm suspensions. suspensions have acceptable camber angle change, while they can handle both the lateral and longitudinal forces. Semi-trailing design has successfully applied to a series of rear-wheel drive cars. Both right and left wheel attached to the same solid